Hello and welcome back to the Triple Double from right here in, well, the middle of Soho in the Mitchell and Ness showroom, which is quite remarkable. I'm Mike Miller, to my left, Sammy the Benchwarmer Gunnell.
Greetings.
Greetings. And to his left, Nick the Encyclopedia Whitfield.
What's up there?
So we've had a bit of a break, but we are back and we're bringing you an awesome new show where we're going to debate aspects of the greatest team ever assembled, would that be fair to say? The USA 1992 Dream Team, 117 All-Star Game appearances between them, 23 NBA titles, 15 MVPs, 13 Finals MVPs, and 4 Rookie of the Year, which is pretty epic. But is that, yeah, that is all. Oh, and 11 of 12 Hall of Famers, of course, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But we're going to go through 3 rounds as usual and declare a winner at the end. The first round is going to be essentially the greatest moments that we've seen from Team USA, followed by the greatest player, because there is actually some debate there, followed by how their legacies, how Team USA's legacy impacted basketball both in America and across the world, because it certainly did both. Okay, let's go straight into round 1. We're going to look at the greatest moments, and we're going to go chronologically. So I think I'm coming to you, Nick. What's your greatest Dream Team moment?
I am going for something that might surprise you. It's actually their only loss.
Okay. You're going to elaborate on that, or is that it?
All right, I'll go full in. Okay, so before the Olympics start, the Olympic Committee, USA Basketball, they're bringing the team together, and they obviously want to set up some scrimmages ahead of time. And you think the guys on that team, there's Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, MJ, Barkley, Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, Leitner, John Stockton, it goes on and on and on. You can't imagine these guys losing a game, and yet that's exactly what happened on a hot day in San Diego, where they bring in a bunch of college guys with the idea being to give them a warm-up game, let them get some chemistry, and some easy wins, if you will, some easy reps. And right from the outset, it becomes very clear that it's going very wrong very quickly. Now, let's not sell these guys short. This was a sick team. This was Chris Webber, Penny Hardaway, Allen Houston, Bobby Hurley, who is a great college player, Eric Montross, Jamal Mashburn, and Rodney Rogers. Now, I'm going to follow up with some quotes from some people who've played in that game, because all it was like handheld footage that came out of that. And so we're kind of relying on first-hand testimony. So Grant Hill, one of the guys who played in that game, he says, Allen Houston hit 10 threes in the scrimmage. They couldn't do anything with Webber. I'm telling you, Webber was killing these guys. We had all our moments. Bobby Hurley, though, they couldn't keep him out of the paint. This is from MJ. We got killed today. They beat us and they played well. We're so out of sync and unsure about the things we feel uncomfortable with in normal situations. We don't have any continuity. If they were in the Olympics, they'd win silver. Larry Bird, talking about Chris Webber. If this boy's coming into the league, I've got to get out of here. Charles Barkley, and we know Barkley is a brash, confident guy. They were a little stronger than I thought they were. Grant Hill, the next day we couldn't get the ball over half court. So the thing that I like about this was, according to media, according to reports, the margin was 8 points. The reported score was 62-54. And Coach K later claimed that Chuck Daly had thrown the game by tactically not subbing in Jordan at the right times, not kind of adapting to what the college guys were doing. But before media were allowed in, it was the scoreboard was scrubbed clean. So no media ever saw this. It was all second-hand reports. So I think that's, we remember rightly so the Dream Team for being, as we've already said, the greatest team ever assembled. And yet, on this one day in San Diego, they lost the game to college kids.
It's a pretty mad story, and fresh out the gate there. That's a high bar to follow. What have you got in Sammy?
It is hard to follow. For me, I love the whole thing of the response of the other team. So for me, their very first game in the Tournament of the Americas, they played against Cuba in their first official game. And just to see the response of Cuba, the players, not even just the fans, but the players to Team USA, I just love it. These guys wanted to just take pictures with them before the game. They wanted to shake their hands. Like a comical shot is like they all have a group photo with Team USA before the game. Jordan's at the front, I think, kneeling down, and he's got like 5 Cuban players around him, like, you know, like all trying to get in his face.
90s defense.
Yeah, exactly, for the photo. And that really kind of set the tone for not just the rest of that tournament, but also the Olympics as well. It wasn't just, we know the response of the fans, and you know, there were shots of the bus and the police coming through, and you know, it was like there were rock stars coming to town, but you saw that from the other teams and the players as well. And so when I look at that moment when they first played Cuba, I think they responded in exactly the way I would respond. I wouldn't care if like Michael Jordan like dunked on my face. I'd be like, Jordan dunked on my face, and I would love it, you know. And Barkley said something like, you know, did they not realise we just come to kick their behinds, basically? I think they did, and they couldn't wait for it to happen, basically, because who else can say that they got battered by Team USA, the Dream Team?
I think they won by like 60 points or something.
Exactly.
It's a bit of a kicking. Would you lose by less?
No, mate. I would take 0 on the scoreboard just to have some of Jordan's sweat drip on my body, which sounds really weird.
Yeah,
it
is actually quite weird.
Got weird quick, but I don't regret anything I just said.
Okay, so both great stories, Nick. The loss. Obviously, there's a lot of future Hall of Famers there on the college team as well. Webber, Penny. Alan Houston must be in there by now. Mike Krzyzewski, he's a military man. Would you ever think he's a liar?
He's also a Duke man.
Oh yeah, I forgot your target. I don't think he lied. The quotes about Daly, all second hand, are like, you know, kept Jordan out of the game at key moments.
I'll tell you, my interpretation of Coach K saying that is, I don't believe it was, because how would you, right from the outset, planned for them to lose, but I feel like as it happened, Chuck Daly deliberately was okay with it happening, and then didn't make the right subs and that sort of thing. I don't think it was planned from the outset.
Through the game?
I don't think he threw the game, I think he wasn't unhappy that it happened.
Right, okay.
I'd put it that way.
Because that's the one sort of chink in the armour for this great story, is that there's an element of doubt that this was a legit W.
But let's run through the Dream Team roster again, and you tell me how you would throw a game with that roster.
Well, I wouldn't sub Michael Jordan at key moments.
Oh no, you've only got Clyde Drexler. How awful.
Oh well, you know. I mean, it's a great argument, and they are all superstars learning to be cohesive as a team, which they ultimately were able to do. Cuba, just upstarts, just no chance against these guys anyway, and just completely came out as fans. And it kind of rings true that I would be the same. Like, even the weird stuff about MJ's sweat. I'd take that. I'm giving round one to Sammy. I would take that, because the sort of precedent it's set for the rest of the Olympics, and just, I mean, people have referenced it being like the Beatles. It's just mad. Yeah, it set the bar high, carried on going. I mean, I was watching the video of it, really grainy footage. God, do you remember when you actually thought that footage was decent quality? And Robinson wins the tip straight to Magic. Magic takes the ball up to the 3-point line, hands to Larry Bird, which is kind of poetic, and then Bird does the old white man back down, turn around, fade away for a guy who's been playing 10 years and has no back left.
Yeah.
Let's go straight into round 2 then. So this is the best players, or player rather, in your opinion, for the USA Dream Team 1992. You won the last round, Sammy. I'll take yours first.
All right, it might be a controversial one, because there was a little bit of controversy surrounding this player, especially early on in the Olympics. I'm going to go with Charles Barkley. And the reason I'm going to go with Charles Barkley is that numbers don't lie. And he had the highest point average across the competition, across the tournament in the Olympics. I think it was 18, yeah. Mate,
18.4?
you're trying to be the encyclopedia, aren't you? That intro with all naming all, mate, it's coming for your title.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, 18 points. But also it was his presence and his dominance, like, in that competition. Like, when I'm saying controversy, there was this thing where he elbowed the guy in the chest, and there's some sort of controversy around that. But I like the fact that he wasn't willing to kind of just treat it like a gentleman, as it were. And I know, again, he's probably in some ways maybe that just means he's not a nice guy. But I just love the fact that he was just going for it. And it wasn't just his performance on the court, which I think was great. It was him off the court as well. It was him kind of walking around the streets. It was him kind of almost being a man of the people in Barcelona, you know, greeting fans, ignoring people who basically said, you know, don't go out without bodyguards.
Yeah, wasn't there a comment, I don't need bodyguards, I've got these two.
I've got these two bodyguards here, you know. And, you know, nothing happened, so obviously maybe what he was saying was true. And so, for me, when I look at that whole competition, like, Michael Jordan was there, you know, some people might say Michael Jordan, but he was out playing golf with Chuck Daly and just, you know, he weren't really hanging with the people. Charles Barkley was the man of the people off the court, and he was dominating on the court.
Do you think Jordan could have hung with the people? Or do you think his star was too big at that point? I mean, he's just won 2 straight titles.
You know, that's a good point, Mike.
Let's save it. We'll save it. But yeah, the Charles Barkley thing was awesome. I think ESPN did the Dream Team documentary for the 20th anniversary, and they had like footage of him just being, you know, swarmed as he's walking the streets. There's crowds of people following. It's that man of the people, definitely. Nick, who have you got?
I've gone for a little guy called Michael Jordan. I don't know if you know him.
Weird.
Yeah. So MJ was the only player in the whole Dream Team to start every single game, and the reason why that is not only he's Michael Jordan, but he also was the kind of undisputed alpha on that team. The weight of his personality weighed heavy on the NBA in that time, as it did in the international setup. So Jack McCallum, who wrote the absolutely definitive book on the Dream Team, he has a quote from Rod Thorne saying, USA Basketball Committee member Rod Thorne won't say it explicitly, but he made it clear that no one would be on the team if Jordan didn't want them on the team. So Jordan was so important to this team that he was actually given responsibility for deciding who else was on the team. And we know there were a couple of omissions on the team, Isaiah Thomas being the biggest one, and it's never been officially confirmed, but everyone thinks it's because he didn't get on with Jordan and Pippen because of their rivalry between the Pistons and the Bulls. So Jordan is actually at a level where he's deciding who else is on the team. Even Magic reflected this when he said Michael was all about who was going to be on the team before he decided who was going to play, and they were happy to kind of listen to him and do what he wanted because they needed him on that team. While he was playing, he set 2 Olympic records for single games. In assists, he got 12 against Germany. LeBron and Kyrie share that record now, but still a record today. And also in steals, he with 8, which is the Olympic record. And he did this twice. He did it against Angola and against future teammate Tony Kukoc in Croatia. He's the all-time steals leader for USA Basketball. And fun fact, only in Olympic competition, only David Robinson, Patrick Ewing and Alonzo Mourning have blocked more shots than MJ.
That's mad.
This is like the scale of domination, this guy. You mentioned Barkley's scoring, he led the team in scoring. But MJ's defense and his personality were the driving force on this team. You talked about walking around, and I think the thing MJ had during this tournament was the iconic scene of him walking in front of a Jordan branded billboard, which is like, for me it's at least the most iconic scene from that tournament in terms of like non-court stuff. And the last thing I want to talk about is it's referred to as the greatest game no one ever saw, where essentially they split the Dream Team in 2. So I'm just going to read what these lineups were. On the white team was MJ, Pippen, Larry Bird, Karl Malone, Patrick Ewing. The blue team was Magic, Mullen, Leitner, your guy Charles Barkley, and David Robinson. And to absolutely nobody's surprise, in this game, which even the players argued was actually tougher than the games they played, MJ led the scoring and his team won. He had 17 of their 40 points, which Barkley had 11 in the loss. And strangely, Leitner was the 3rd highest scorer in that game. Another fun fact.
Who was Leitner?
That would have been your boy.
Charles Barkley.
You knew that, didn't you, mate? That's why you asked that question.
Maybe.
I want to make a point about that. The greatest game no one ever saw. How do we know if they're telling the truth, Nick?
Because there was a documentary in 2012 that had video of it.
All right. Well, I haven't seen it. if a tree falls down in the woods and no one's around, did it really make a sound?
I think I've got a couple of points to finish. If we look at the context of when this is happening, Jordan's coming off 2 NBA titles. Then we have the '92 Olympics. And then we go into the following season where the Bulls match up with the Phoenix Suns in the finals. Do you remember how that one went?
I do remember, yeah. But the Phoenix Suns lost.
Yeah, they did. Okay.
Charles Barkley happened to be playing for them.
Yeah.
But to be fair to Barkley, in his first year with the Suns, he became the MVP off the back of this, well, essentially riding the high of '92.
Yeah.
What amazes me about Jordan is you can say the golf thing. Okay? The day of the final, plays 36 holes of golf, which, I mean, I've tried to play 18 holes of golf before, and that was horrible. Like, I'm definitely not a golfer. But he then went out and dropped 22 in the gold medal game, and that's just mad.
And he also didn't seem to sleep throughout the whole competition, which is a bit weird. I know I'm kind of like now back in Michael Jordan. It's hard not to in some ways, but like he didn't seem to sleep.
No, like they had card games till like 5, 6 in the morning, and then he would just get up and go to the gym. I think that's 1-1. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back for round 3. We'll get the winner, and then we'll look at some really awesome gear. So back in a minute. Hello and welcome back to the Triple Double from right here in Mitchell and Ness showroom in London. It's still amazing that we're here. It's if you guys can see behind the camera, it's just gear upon gear of just epicness. That doesn't even make sense, but I'm still going with it. That's how in awe I am. We've got one more round to go. Round 3, it's tied 1-1. We're going to look at the legacy of the USA Dream Team. Sammy, where are you going to argue this legacy lies?
I would say the legacy lies within the USA and USA basketball.
Okay, and Nick?
I am arguing that the legacy of the Dream Team, or its biggest legacy, is how it allowed international basketball to grow.
Okay. You want to go first, Sammy?
Why not?
Why not?
Definitely making the best point here, so let's make the best point go first. So, confidence. Basically, it's I've mentioned him earlier, Charles Barkley. And I can summarise the legacy that the Dream Team, the original Dream Team, has for subsequent USA teams in one statement that he made. And this one statement that he made was that he got upset watching amateur USA players, college players who were kids, playing against professional players from other parts of the world, getting beat as they did in other Olympics. Was it 72 and 88, maybe?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Encyclopedia. And then teams celebrating as if they'd achieved something. This is what Charles Barkley said. He hated seeing that. And that was part of the controversy and the reason why the Dream Team was even allowed to exist, because in other countries they had basically professional basketball players, but the NBA wasn't allowed. And so to see then the USA come back in 1992, and you've got to remember they were coming off a loss in the previous Olympics where, I forgot they beat them now. Was it
Soviet Union?
Was it Soviet Union again? Yeah.
I just remember it's David Robinson.
Yeah, and like Danny Manning and those guys crying, which is understandable. But like, to be left with that image, and then for the USA to come back and dominate in the way they did, that really showed the world that you can't get one over on USA basketball. And I think that pride that kind of it established and that continued from there. Like every team that plays for the USA now can look at 1992 and that can be their benchmark for dominance, that benchmark for the pride of representing their country, the pride of the legacy that they're continuing, that their names can be counted among those original Dream Team guys as they represent their country. And so Charles Barkley rightfully said it, that people were celebrating like they achieved something, and they actually hadn't. When they brought out their big guns, the world just completely crumbled at the dominance of USA basketball. And I say that with tears in my eyes. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Any player who plays for Team USA needs to watch, a Team USA documentary about the Dream Team and think about why they're doing this.
An impassioned statement. Nick, what's your counter?
So I take your one country and I raise it to all the others.
I thought you were going to nail like 374 countries or whatever there is.
Yeah. So I'd argue that in 1992, the Dream Team is USA's best export. All the kids around the world watching that team, they'd kind of grown up with their domestic leagues and, as you mentioned, like watching the amateur teams from USA competing in these Olympics and FIBA tournaments previously to that. And it really opened the world's eyes to the next level that they had to reach. So this is obviously in '92, this is in Barcelona. There's a couple of kids watching. You might know Mark and Pau Gasol. It's no coincidence that Argentina went on to have its best generation of players following that, as well as Spain. We have Dirk watching in Germany growing up, who goes on to make a precedent. And to put this into perspective of like how the gap has closed between the rest of the world and the US. So on the opening day of the 91-92 NBA season, there were 23 international players from 18 countries. In this last NBA season that we just come out of, there were 108 international players from 42 different countries. And if we look at this season as well, we've really actually got to our high point of international basketball when you think the MVP in Giannis was Greek, Defensive Player of the Year was French in Gobert, Rookie of the Year is from Slovenia, Luka Doncic, Most Improved Player from Cameroon is Siakam, and so I think the
Raptors are Canadian.
And NBA champions, Canadian.
Sorry, I'm helping.
Which side are you on here?
Yeah, my bad.
And I think, so my point is that as good as it was for USA Basketball and they set the precedent and like all USA teams get compared to them inevitably, I think you're right, but it also set the precedent for what elite basketball was to the rest of the world, and that's what I think the biggest legacy of the Dream Team was.
It's interesting, both points have got really sort of good bits to them. They can both be picked apart either way, I guess, because my counter to your 104 on NBA rosters at the start of the season is, well, that's still 74% of the NBA is American, which is a huge, overwhelming majority. My counter to you is, if you look at the FIBA World Cup, which is due to start any minute now, at time of recording, might have started just. The American, a lot of the guys didn't want to be involved. They withdrew for other reasons, which is understandable. So, but it kind of argues against the national pride sort of thing. It's tough. Come on, convince me.
Make the right choice, Mike.
Make the right choice.
Team USA jerseys are sick. So, think about that for a little while.
Well, I will do. I'll sit here and stare at
legacy, just in the jerseys alone. So, point made.
In terms of my international angle, if we look at the World Cup again, this will be the first major international competition, I'd argue, ever, where this competition will open and definitively the best two, maybe even more, players in the tournament will not be on the USA roster. That has never happened before.
That could just be social media, mate.
Instagram.
Instagram.
Hold on, wait. So
Instagram.
Giannis, the MVP of the league.
Instagram, mate. He's been watching highlights on Facebook. Nothing to do with the Dream Team.
As a Brit, I know how influential the Dream Team was on my.
And as we sit here as three Brits talking about the Dream Team,
I think there's only one way this can go. It obviously had as big as the impact was in America, the global impact was just huge. I mean, it opened up the way for international games, broke the barrier almost immediately for guys going over from the USSR. You had Marciulionis, you had Sabonis. But I tell you what, though, I love the way the Americans, Jordan and Pippen, took apart Tony Kukoc with all that whole argument about contracts. Yeah. Okay, so rest of the world win, which means Nick wins 2-1, and we haven't got a trophy this time. Instead, we have gold, because only gold will do. A gold Jordan jersey for you.
It's fitting. It wasn't a Barkley jersey.
I think that was part of it as well. If it had been a Barkley jersey, I'd have had to go the other way.
Exactly. Yeah, this feels like it's all been a setup, mate.
It does, doesn't it? It definitely hasn't.
Oh, congratulations, mate.
Yeah, you seem over the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at him. He's delighted.
Some quality merch.
Quality merch. All right, we're going to take one more quick break and we're going to come back and show you all this amazing gear. Hello and welcome back to the Triple Double. Still here in this amazing Mitchell and Ness store in the middle of London. We've got some merch to talk about and discuss because Mitchell and Ness have amazingly re-released the Dream Team jerseys, which is almost perfect timing for us, seeing as we were planning on doing this episode for so long. We're going to go through some of them and just chat about them in general, but these are the authentic jerseys made to the same specifications that they were in 1992. I'm going to go first because this is a controversial guy to be involved in the Dream Team. It is Christian Laettner, the token college player, who was, 2-3 months away from hitting one of the biggest shots in college basketball history for Duke, who went on to become the defending champions. And there's a bit of controversy there because Laettner or Shaq, not really a question now, but back then apparently it was. Your guys' thoughts on Shaq being overlooked for a spot on this team?
There's argument that Laettner was blatantly the most, dominant college player at the time, or the most celebrated player at the time, which is two different things.
Yeah.
And maybe they had too many centres on the team, but I would have loved to have seen Shaq play, and I think he was, in hindsight, and I think probably at the time as well, he was clearly the guy that should have been on the team. And then there's many different theories about that. Too many to go into today. But yeah.
Shaq would have been epic on that team.
He would.
That would have been scary.
But I would say as a side note, I loved Dream Team 2, man. They were like a Dream Team remix with all the young guys, and Shaq was on there, Sean Kemp and other guys, and he dominated with Dream Team 2.
Man.
So I'm glad that even though he didn't make Dream Team 1, that meant that we saw him on Dream Team 2 just destroying guys. It was great.
Were you aggrieved to see a Duke Blue Devil selected?
Always. I think the interesting thing about Laettner for me is when you hear about the decision making and like why people say that decision was made. It was thought that the paint is obviously a different shape in FIBA and European competitions, whereas in the States it's a rectangle, so at the bottom of the paint you can get closer to the hoop, whereas in FIBA rules it kind of projects out to the baseline. So the thinking there was that Laettner, being not so reliant on like being in the paint, would actually be more effective than Shaq, who was obviously a dunker, a power player. It obviously proved to be nonsense when we saw what Shaq did in the league and then did in the FIBA World Cup after that. But it kind of like they tried to apply some logic there, but again, it was a bit silly. The funny thing is, well, there's a quote from Shaq about that, and he says that while he obviously thought he was the best player and he was way more powerful, he could overpower Laettner, he did actually say that he thought Laettner was the more fundamentally sound player. So as crazy as it looks now, and in like retrospect, at the time it wasn't quite as crazy as it now looks like it was.
The bit that sort of tickles me on this is that they tried to use an argument for the 12th guy on the roster about, his fundamentals would be a big difference. They outscored teams by like 46.5 points. Yeah, okay. No, I don't buy that. I think they missed a trick there marketability wise, but Laettner himself, fantastic college player, actually got an all-star appearance, but is the only member not to go in the Hall of Fame. Sammy, who you got?
I have got Magic Johnson. I especially love his inclusion in the 1992 Dream Team, just because I know kind of what it meant for him, and I think for him coming off the back of retirement, which was off the back of being diagnosed with HIV, which was, we talk about that being such an unknown at the time. He's competing in this. I think for him, I think I heard him say this, that he was able to be at peace and walk away from basketball at peace because of being involved with this team. Of course, getting to play on the same team as Larry Bird, his lifelong, well, at least career-long friend and rival, and to just draw a line under his career. And the same kind of with Larry Bird, and for them to be on that team together and for that to be the end. I know Magic Johnson came back very briefly in '96, But you know, for me, this was the end of his career, and it was a beautiful end. So yeah, it was great, and it's a beautiful jersey, of course.
Yeah. Johnson. You're right. What a great bookend to his career. Nick, who have you got?
I've got Scottie Pippen, and I love Pippen's role in the '92 Olympics. This was really his coming out party as an elite player.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been known, obviously he's two-time champion, but it was Jordan getting the plaudits for that. And while Pippen was like appreciated for his defense, for his ability to play alongside MJ, it wasn't really seen as like what a great player he was in his own right. And even MJ came out and said in some of these scrimmages with these elite guys, it's Pippen who's the best player in some of these games. And I think that was really, his coming out party as an elite player. He led the team in assists. This is a team with Magic Johnson on it, with John Stockton. And it's Pippen leading the team in assists. It was, legit.
So what are you guys' first impressions then? You got the jerseys in your hands. The originals, I think, were champion, I believe. So obviously Mitchell and Ness have recreated it using the same manufacturing techniques as were used at the time. We've got sort of the screen printing. This was the first time actually. If you look back at USA jerseys over the years, this is the first. This one is really different. I mean, actually, I'll tell a lie. In 1936, I think it was when I was doing my research. The jerseys they had then are really weird. They've got a sash on them and a little breast, but then they became the staple USA, which they've kind of gone back to now. Whereas this one, you've got the two colours in the USA. It's the first time they stuck. I think the only time they stuck basketball underneath. We see the first appearance of the star. So it's quite a fresh and unique design from that perspective. What are your guys' thoughts on it?
I love it, and I love the fact that Dream Team 2 wore it as well, because the numbers just are so, like, I remember it. I remember who wore 15 for the original Dream Team, who wore it for the second Dream Team. Same with number 9, famously worn by Michael Jordan in the Olympics. But they're specifically these, they're great. Like, if I can, big up my nerd status for a moment, I have had in the past a game worn USA jersey. It was a Sean Kemp one, and it's the same sort of quality as you got here. It just beautifully kind of matches the style that they wore and the quality that they wore. It's amazing, really beautiful.
Yeah, I think that the reason for buying throwback jerseys is because of its iconic players, its iconic moments, and everything we talked about today. It doesn't get bigger than the Dream Team in terms of legacy, in terms of the players. Got to pick these up.
Definitely, couldn't agree more. You can pick them up too. Go to nbastore.eu where you can find all of these beauties for sale. Let them know you came from us by using the code DCPOD15, DCPOD15. Other than that, thank you for watching. If you want, why aren't you? Go and follow Sammy on Instagram at Warming the Bench. Go and follow Nick on Twitter at NJ Whitfield. I'm on there as well at Mike Miller_time. That's a mouthful. We'll see you next time for another episode, but thank you very much for watching.